Welcome to Success Unleashed, Beyond the Job Site, the only podcast created to help contractors win in business and in life. And now your host, Gerritt Bake.
Welcome back to another episode of Success Unleashed Beyond the Job Site. Today we have a really good friend of mine, Chris Wolford. Chris, I've known him, we're going on 5 years now. 4.5 years? 5 years. Who's counting? Long time. I met Chris when I moved from Arizona to Boise, Idaho. And he was one of the first people that greeted me with a smile on his face. And I'll tell you, to this day, he always greets me with a smile on his face. He's a very, very genuine person. But Chris isn't here because he's a nice guy. Chris is here because he's a successful business owner and, more importantly, a contractor. He owns a couple different businesses. The first is called Garage Experts, and he actually owns 2 different locations, one in Boise and one in Salt Lake City. Combined, the 2 locations generate over $2 million a year. He also owns a, we'll call it renovation, flip, and small infill project developer development company, something like that. But it's called Elevate Homes, and he's been running Elevate Homes for 9 years now. And Elevate Homes generates over 8 figures annually. Chris is a husband. He's a father. He's a gentleman who has served our country proudly for years. But again, more importantly, he is just an all-around great man. I want to welcome to the show my friend, Chris Wolford.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being here. I want to get right into it. You have a very unique approach to business in that you didn't grow up in the business world, nor did you grow up in the trades. And yet here we are talking about business, right? And more importantly, talking about your multiple contracting or contracting related businesses. How was it that you ended up, Reader's Digest version, how was it that you ended up where it is that you are today, owning multiple businesses and doing 8 figures annually? So let's talk about you and your childhood. Where did you grow up and what was that environment like? Did you come from an entrepreneurial background?
For sure. So I grew up in Southern California, San Diego to be specific. I feel like my dad was kind of a serial entrepreneur, always kind of chasing the next thing. So probably got that from him, which is probably a pro and a con sometimes, always chasing, but also got a lot of influence from my wife's mom and dad as well, my in-laws, for the stability. So I had that chase of the entrepreneur side, but still wanting that stability too. So it was a good fine balance for sure, man.
And how did you end up in Boise, Idaho?
Luck of the draw, I guess. So serving in the Air Force, it was time for me to do a permanent change of station from my last location in Southern California. And I was probably the only one in California that did not want to relocate to Idaho, but here I am and I'm loving it. So super thankful to get orders up here. It was funny how it all played out.
Oh, that's beautiful. Again, thank you for your service. You've done an amazing job serving this great country of ours. Now, when did you actually start to get the itch, the bug that said, hey, I like this space and I want to see what I can do in it?
I would say probably like 2018. I was doing a lot of retail real estate, representing a lot of clients, and I was doing it more for like a side hustle that turned into like a full hustle. Just way too much time involved. So I was trying to figure out how to leverage my time. I was looking more into maybe some opportunities doing the fix and flips, because I've always wanted, whenever it came time to do a permanent change of station, I've always wanted to hold a house, which I did as a rental, and then kind of fell into fix and flip a little bit and maybe saw some opportunity, as the market shifted more into the retail construction space. But obviously, I don't want to get too in-depth on retail construction and be there for months at a time on a full renovation. So try to find something that would be in and out, quick and easy. So.
And what was your first fix and flip project like?
Yeah, it was really easy. I made like probably about $8,000, but definitely not a huge winner, but carpet paint, lipstick, and kind of fell into it on accident when I was doing some prospecting for expired and canceled listings in Southern California. A lady just said, hey, I want to get what I paid for my house 3 years ago. And, thinking on opportunity, I'm like, instantly, I'm like, oh, let's do it. Had no idea how I was going to solve it, get the money, had no background in construction, and we're just going to figure it out as we go. That's sometimes how life is for me, but that's okay. I'm a big visionary.
You are definitely a big visionary. So let's talk about this, because you mentioned this earlier, right? Half of you is very entrepreneurial based. The other half is very like practical, like have a plan and make sure you're executing on that. And you said it comes from your wife's family, but it also comes from the military, right? Very rarely does the military just like, yeehaw, here we go, let's storm the hill. There's usually a plan.
As much as I wanted to do, as much as I wanted to be, but yeah, sorry, go on.
You're good. You're right. A lot of guys join the military like, yeehaw, here we go. And they're like, wait a minute, what's all this rule and structure crap, right? But it's good, right? So talk about, what was that like? Obviously, you mentioned huge opportunity. I'm going to jump into this. I don't know what to do and how to do it. How quickly did you realize that the winging it strategy probably wasn't going to be beneficial for you long term?
Probably trying to grow. We got military orders shortly after that, which was ironic. So I had no idea I was going to finish a fix and flip from afar. And we ended up finishing it up with some contractors, and it ended up selling after we moved out of California a couple months later. So pretty funny how that played out. It almost forced me to grow in a way, interestingly enough. But 2019 came around. I did 14 fix and flips, and it was like a job again. And I was trying to handle both funnels, the sales and the ops side. And just realizing that I couldn't grow and I couldn't always be fully involved being active duty at the same time. So I'm like, I need to figure this out. So I was lucky to find a business partner who definitely was heavy on the operations side. So I don't think I'm still fully on the ops side, but I probably, a good liaison between sales and ops at this point, kind of managing both.
It's interesting, right? And you mentioned this. And for those of you who are watching or listening right now, pay attention to what he's saying, right? It's okay to be a dreamer. It's okay to be a visionary. It's okay to think big. But at some point, and Chris kind of glanced over it, but it was basically 1.5 2 years into this thing. He's like, hey, this ain't going to grow anymore if I have to manage every single aspect of the business, right? And he realized what his strengths were. And you as a business owner are going to have strengths. And guess what? You're going to have weaknesses. The quicker you can identify what those are, the quicker you can start to surround yourself with the right people. Now, I know Chris's business partner, smart guy, and he's very detail oriented, right? Very much an operations guy. You put him in front of somebody and, have him, hey, or sell this pen to this guy, probably wouldn't go over so well. But that's not what his strengths are, right? He knows what he's good at, and he's good at being able to do that. What was that like? Because the difference between you trying to flip 14 houses, I say trying, but you did it. You flipping 14 houses by yourself, basically, GCing your own jobs, finding your own contractors, so on and so forth, and then having him on board to be able to handle that aspect of things for you.
I think in 2020 it was really interesting. We were fortunate enough to complete 35, 40 projects in that year, but it was a lot of growing pains trying to give up the control. I realized in order to grow as well, you have to give up control. And I think if you hear anything in this entire podcast, just remember to give up control.
Wow, that's an interesting one. And what was that process like for you? Was it like I think I have an idea of the answer, but I want to hear you say it. Was it like an overnight thing? Was it like a 30-day thing? Did it take, 12 months? Like, what was this process like of, hey, I know I can handle everything because I've done it before, but in order for me to continue to grow, I have to let go of this. In that battle, like how long did it take before you're like, you know what? I fully trust him. He can handle these things now. I can now focus on these other things.
So trust is one thing. So trust was easy for me probably within a few months, but I think giving up the control and not stepping on toes probably took me about 12 to 18 months realistically.
12 to 18 months.
Yeah.
That is a long time. But it's a realistic time, right?
Yeah.
I've worked with a couple guys, there in Boise and some other spots where they were clear on their strengths and their weaknesses. They were clear on who they needed to help them out. And when they got that person, they, I think, too quickly assumed that they were the right person, and they turned their back on operations or sales or whatever the thing was. And within 6 months, the business had almost burned to the ground. And it had nothing to do with them. It had to do with their ability to understand what you just said, which is trust is one thing and letting go is another, right? And in the military, this, police work, we use the same phrase. It's trust but verify,
right?
Right. So a lot of people just say, oh, hey, Chris, he's got, 20 years of project management experience. He's the best guy for the job. We interviewed him, he passed with flying colors. Okay, Chris, here's what we want you to do, and here's how we expect you to do it. And then they turn their back, and all of a sudden everything comes tumbling down, right? Your job is not to just give somebody an assignment and turn around and assume they're going to do it, right? Your job is to verify that it's getting done. Would you mind sharing what that process in a little more detail was kind of like for you? Again, based on your background, because this is something that a lot of contractors either are struggling with right now or going to struggle with in the future.
So I felt for a long time, mine was more like going out on the job site and like looking at quality of work, or, getting really granular at the 100-foot view. And as we grew, I feel like I really shifted and really trying to dial in like our KPIs from our front end on our sales, generating revenue, to invoice jobs, to whatever the case may be, no matter the business, right? If you're looking at the fix and flip realm, looking at the financials and the KPIs that you want identified there, or if you're looking on the garage expert side, you're looking at your impression share to your leads, your estimates to your jobs, to, if we completed those jobs on time and were they profitable. So just really dialing in the KPIs.
Love it. So when was it when you felt comfortable letting go of the operational side of things? Was it when you had a process in place for verifying that the work was getting done right? Like what was that turning point where you finally were like, I'm comfortable letting go of this?
I think once we really defined roles, like once we really tried to stay in our lane and understand each other, it really was helpful. So
that's pretty powerful. I want to kind of shift gears just a little bit. I want to talk specifically about your businesses here in a minute, but you brought something up, talking about the numbers and the things that you should be paying attention to. And it's something that, unfortunately, I've been having a lot of conversations around lately. And it's this idea of, making money versus keeping money. Now, if I was to ask you, when is the money made in either a fix and flip or a garage floor, coating or putting in cabinets or whatever, when is the money made? What would your answer be?
After all your expenses are paid.
After all your expenses are paid. Now, I think that concept is understood, but here's where I think people go sideways, contractors especially. I don't think that they understand that in order to ensure that there's money left over on the back end, you have to make sure that you're accounting for everything on the front end, right? So like a fix and flip deal. You may think that, hey, I can get this thing flipped I buy it for, 300 and flip it for 100. I'm 400 in, I think I'll be all right. But that's not where you're going to make your money, right? You're going to make your money understanding what the market's willing to pay for it ahead of time, right?
For sure.
So how long did it take you to finally dial in? And this is just for your flip operations. How long did it take you to finally dial in the understanding of, hey, it's all front end. There's nothing on the back end of this thing?
Yeah, I think probably 10, 15 projects in. It took a while, like being able to kind of predict what the market was going to do based on comps, making sure that you're accounting for everything from, costs with escrow to commissions to, concessions to, repairs during the escrow process that may come up, different things like that. Just factoring every possible contingency that you possibly can and making sure that you're good.
That's a great answer. Now, how did those lessons that you learned help you in Garage Experts and scaling Garage Experts?
I think it really helped us understand, there's two different numbers in my opinion on a P&L. There's your gross profit when you're looking at your COGS minus your cost of labor, really granular, but you're not factoring in your variable expenses, your rent, your workman's comp, your taxes, et cetera. So I think that really helped us to identify, not only the fixed costs that are right there in front of us, but, our workman's comp that we pay on a quarter, or, allocating resources for truck repairs. So when our transmission broke last month, we had $5,000 to pay for that wonderful Silverado we got that we should have gotten rid of. That's okay.
Yeah, the inevitable vehicle expenses, right? And right, again, if you're watching or listening, pay attention to what Chris is saying, right? And he's saying in very simplistic terms, but I want you to understand it. Your money, again, isn't made on the back end, it's made on the front end. The only way that you make money on the front end is you understand all of the costs involved in producing, selling, manufacturing, building, whatever the thing is that you're selling, right? And that includes your people. That includes your office space. That includes, any type of insurance, whether it be for the business or individuals, right? All of these things you're going to have to account for. And if you know you're going to have to account for it, why not build it into the front end? I was talking to a trim carpenter yesterday, and he's like, why does it feel like every single year I pay Uncle Sam everything that I have in my bank account? And how many guys feel that way? But it's because they're not accounting for this stuff ahead of time, right? If you know you're paying up 30%, for example, tax rate, well, guess what? You should be pulling that money out ahead of time. And if you know you're going to pull that money out ahead of time and your numbers aren't going to be where you want them to be, then change your numbers, right? Once the deal's done, you can't change the numbers. If anything, your margins are going to shrink a little bit because, oh, I forgot about this, or hey, fuel cost was a little higher, or hey, this took a little bit longer than it should have taken, right? It's not going to grow. So
costs on that side are always going to be higher than what you think. So
yeah, very true. Going back to the houses, you started fix and flips, but you've added some, you call them infill projects, right? Some small multifamily, and I know you're doing some larger spec homes now as well. How is it that you are accounting for these costs as best as possible?
I mean, dialed in performas. So just really understanding, every bit of our cost and really getting our budget in line before we make a decision. And then projecting for, any hiccups along the road, whether that's during construction or, hiccups on the disposition side. The only thing we know is certain is going to be change. So
that's a pretty powerful statement, right? The only thing that we know for certain is there's going to be change, right? Now, for those of people who are listening or watching and don't know what a pro forma is, do you mind just kind of explaining that real quick?
Yeah. Do you want me to more explain it on the business side or on the real estate side?
Overall business, I think, because that's where I was going with it, is it applies across the board.
For sure. I mean, I think, keeping it really relatively simple, when you're looking at like an SBA loan, when we were looking at buying the business for Garage Experts, we have to set aside projections for, 3 years in the future. And we're guessing everything, based on data that we have from the previous owner, but also, data you may have just kind of by looking at your past expenses, but really dialing in everything specifically for every bit of the expense and understanding what all those expenses are and what you're going to be selling your product at, to making sure that you keep your margin strong. Because last year we made a really good living and I'm super thankful for it, but our margin was not where we wanted to be at the beginning of the year. So this year it is all about margin, and it is all about increasing our margin, making sure that we're good. Because just like you always say, the top line doesn't matter. It's what you keep.
Amen, brother. Amen. And that's so true. And again, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, cash is king. The only thing that matters at the end of the day is what am I holding on to in my bank account? Your little side story here, you're familiar with ClickFunnels, they're in Boise. ClickFunnels is a massive company. If you don't know them, they help you build websites and funnels and things. But their business model is really, really like on point. And I think they do 100+ million a year in revenue, $1 billion valuation. Great company. Inside, one of the things that Russell Brunson did to help grow the company is he created what he called the 2 Comma Club, right? And this 2 Comma Club is when you generate $1 million in business using their platform to run your business through, right? So their websites, their funnels and things to help you generate revenue. And when the 2 Comma Club first came out, I think it was 2018, 2019, when it first came out, I mean, it was brilliant marketing strategy because everybody wanted the 2 Comma Club. Because what they would do is at their annual conference, you got your 2 Comma Club, you could walk across the stage with your 2 Comma Club plaque and take a picture with Russell and his partner, right? And it was super cool. And then you'd see on Facebook and Instagram stuff, there's now ads and there's things with people holding their 2 Comma Club, right? It was this proof of, hey, look what I've done, right? I've hit 7 figures. Well, I got to know their president and their chief marketing officer pretty well. And we had a conversation one time. We were talking about this, and they said most of the people that hit 7 figures, this 2 Comma Club, aren't actually making money.
I believe it.
Which is crazy, right? You're talking 7 figures, but you're not making money. At that point, what is the point? Right.
Right.
Now, some of them were doing it, on purpose because, again, it was a big marketing tool and whatnot. But most of the folks thought that if I hit 7 figures, then I'll be successful because I can leverage this plaque to say I made 7 figures. No. You didn't make 7 figures. You generated 7 figures in revenue, right? But how much did you actually make? Sure. Obviously, you and I were talking the other day about this. There's a difference between, revenue and what's left over in your bank account. And that's the margin, right? And I love that this year you're focused more on the margin. Like, I don't necessarily want to make more money. I want to keep more money. How has that adjusted your approach to business?
Really staying dialed into our sweet spot. I mean, there's stuff that we would do before in the commercial realm, or really getting creative and bidding on everything. Or really, I just want to stay in a normal person's garage now. I don't want to do a big commercial space. I'd rather do, 5 or 6 garages because it's way easier. We know exactly what to expect. There's no uniqueness, no difference. And we're really able to project based on that.
Wow, that is awesome. So what you're saying is by simplifying, you're able to multiply.
For sure.
So powerful. Now, why do you think that a lot of contractors want to get, for lack of a better term, fancy?
It's probably ego, or it's probably chasing dollars.
Oh, it is. Yeah, I mean, let's just call it what it is, right? Your ego is not your amigo, as they say, right? Because the ego does. Oh, yeah, I can do this crazy commercial space, 100,000 square feet, whatever. Yeah, except that your margins are like whoop, and then all of a sudden you're dealing with these factors that you don't normally deal with, which are impacting your margins, right? And at the end of the day, you're like, yeah, really cool. We did 100,000 square foot facility, but I actually made more money doing 12 just regular standard garages.
Mm-hmm.
So that's powerful, and I love to hear that. Now let's talk a little bit about garage experts. What would you say you can attribute your success to? I mean, you got 2 locations, over 2 million in less than 2 years. What would you say you can attribute that success to?
I would say probably recent success, within the last probably 7-8 months, was getting out of my own way on the sales side and hiring a sales manager, because I felt like I sold because I wanted to sell no matter the price. I knew what was profitable, and as long as, it was slightly above profitable, it's okay. But now it's like, here's our floor, here's what we're selling at, and that's that. And if they don't want to pay it, hey, no harm, no foul, but let's move on. So it was really an eye-opening experience for me.
So you've got team. What else would you attribute your success to?
I would say probably just growing the brand in the area with some marketing, and really being able to utilize relationships that we have in other businesses by kind of, I wouldn't call it cross-branding per se, because it's not like we're doing both companies together, but the sphere that we're in the real estate side lends very well in the construction side. Just like we know what do they call it? The power of teams or something like that. And BNI, real estate and construction are kind of tied together. So kind of interesting that we kind of cruised over to more construction than real estate.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting. Now, one of the things that I wanted to ask you, a lot of contractors are starting, ground up, they're in a trade, or, they're helping a builder and they think they can, do it on their own. And they don't understand how to actually run a business. They know how to be a tradesman. They're good at their craft. They don't understand how to run a business, which is why so few of them actually experience success. Well, one of the things that's attractive about the right franchise is what comes in the deal. Like, the name Garage Experts isn't what's driving the growth of the business. It's the
Right.
people, but what else is it on that back end that's provided by the structure of a franchise?
And it's all the systems. It's all what works already. It's all the data. It's all the analytics for sure.
Yeah. And again, I'm not telling you guys to go out and buy a franchise. That's not what this conversation is about. Although maybe at some point we'll have some affiliate agreement and I can point you somewhere and make some money off of it. But that's not what this is about. I want you to understand, though, the reason that Chris has achieved the success that he has is not by making it more complicated. And it's not by doing things that he's not good at. It's literally by simplifying. You've heard him say it multiple times, right? How do I make this thing easier? What is it I'm focusing on? How am I bringing in the right people to be able to help me focus on those specific things, right? And systems and processes, as much as A-type personalities or whatever you want to call them, visionaries, whatever the term of the day is, as much as we like things to be chaotic and random and exciting, at the end of the day, we want to look at our bank account and say, it's growing, right? Because what's the point if you're doing this and there's no money in there?
Right.
You got a hobby, you don't have a business, right? So what was it for you? Obviously, you started Elevate Homes on your own. And yes, you brought on a partner and slowly were able to build that thing up. What is it for you that made Garage Experts so attractive?
Again, it just comes down to simplicity. Doing the renovations for so long, we really like the idea of being in and out, in a day. We're doing epoxy floors in a day, or, most of our cabinet jobs for storage are in and out in a day or two. We're not opening up walls. We don't have change orders. We don't have to hold hands too much on the customer side, which, don't get me wrong, I love customer service and taking care of people, but at the same time, construction gets messy the longer you're there, the more emotions are involved. So
huge. Where is it that you see Garage Experts and ultimately Elevate Homes going?
Yeah, for Garage Experts, I think it's pretty easy. I want to get maybe 10 of these up and running and, keep 5 and maybe build up 5 and sell off 5 of those. So keep half and sell off 5 and kind of go from there, mostly probably in the Pacific Northwest. So we'll see how that kind of plays out over the time. Kind of struggling through Salt Lake City right now, trying to do that from afar, but I think we got some solutions in place. So still doing successful in Salt Lake, but we got some work to do. In Elevate Homes, I mean, if there's opportunity there, we'll continue to do that. But I don't necessarily know if that's, the full passion. But we have a good sphere, good network. So we'll continue to do it here and there, but we're doing probably a third or half the volume that we were doing, right after COVID. So we'll see how things play out.
Yeah. Things have definitely changed. Let me ask you, of what you do right now inside of business, you do multiple things. Of what you do inside of business, what is it that excites you the most?
Probably the marketing side lately. I feel like that's where I put most of my time into, is really understanding, impressions, cost per thousands for views, our cost per lead, or click per lead. All the analytics on the marketing side have been pretty interesting, and seeing the different copy that others are creating that generate revenue, and the difference between the copy and the call to action. I don't know. I'm kind of nerding out on that stuff lately. That's
cool. What would you say? What would you say to a contractor who, maybe they're, I know successful is a relative term. Let's just say they're doing at least $500,000 in revenue, maybe even $1 million in revenue, but they still haven't stepped into the paid advertising space. What would you say would be the best approach for them to take?
I think before paid advertising, in Boise, it's very much a network here. I think you need to spend more on time in developing relationships. And once you've maximized the amount of relationships that you can build in the Treasure Valley, then start chasing down the paid advertising. There's so much, I shouldn't say opportunity, that's a bad word, but there's so much, networking that can be done here, where you have this trade referring this trade. I think there's an unlimited amount of business in that aspect, but what you don't have is you don't have the time. So I would probably hire out like an account executive before I started spending money on paid advertising. Just depends on how granular you wanted to get.
I love
What's
that.
What your business is too, right? Like if you're an HVAC or roofer, everybody has those in their home, epoxy floors and cabinets. It's probably a more unique customer avatar. So
Yeah, I love that you said that, right? Before you get into paid ads, and I'm sure they've heard me say it before, but before you get into paid ads, maximize your network, right? Maximize your ability to connect with people who can either use your product and service or who have access to those people, right? And you mentioned, the correlation or the relationship between real estate and construction, right? That you're able to leverage. It's so important as a business owner, as a contractor, to understand what marketing is before you start exploring additional marketing channels.
mm-hmm.
Right? Because you even mentioned this, right? It's understanding the copy. And for those contractors that don't know what copy is, it's not a copy machine, and it's not cheating off your neighbor like you did in high school. Copy is what you put inside of an ad, right? What are people looking at, and what are you saying that's making them want to click, want to schedule a call, want to scan a barcode and fill out a form? Like, what is the information that you're either giving them or making them or telling them that makes them want to take action, right? That's the copy. And it's the same thing in person, right? Like, what am I saying or what am I doing with someone that makes them want to take action? Sure. If you can't get them to do it in person, they're probably not going to do it online.
Right.
And you've experienced this. So, since we're kind of going down that path, marketing agencies, you've been exposed to a few, you've, tried to work with a couple. What would you say is the difference between approaching a marketing company, understanding your avatar, i.e. the people you want to work with, and what it is that you want to offer, versus approaching a marketing company saying, hey, can you set up some ads for me?
Right. I think you need to understand where you want to be at the end of their cycle. So what does the marketing company control? The marketing company controls the marketing aspect all the way until your salesman gets that lead, right? So you need to identify what the cost per customer acquisition is going to be, or the cost per lead, because those are the metrics that you can hold them accountable to. And you can also define your expectations too. So yeah.
That's huge, right? That clear understanding of the expectations that you have from them as well. And again, as a contractor, yes, it's important to hold your people accountable, but anybody you do business with as well. You work with a subcontractor, same thing. You work with a marketing company, same thing, right? You work with an outsourced accountant or bookkeeper, guess what? Same thing, right? You set the expectations and you hold them accountable. And if they can't meet your expectations, they're not your guy or your gal. Go find somebody else.
We went through a few of those last year. It's okay.
It's true. We're laughing a little bit, right? But it's part of the process, right? We don't understand this. Like, how many subs, and I know putting you on the spot a little bit, how many subs have you gone through in, your 8+ years, 9 years working with or owning Elevate Homes?
Hundreds.
Hundreds of subs.
Right.
Hundreds.
But the subs we have right now are very clear on our expectation and know exactly how to communicate. And we will drop everything to take care of them, and they'll drop everything to take care of us. So,
wow.
Matters.
That's what matters. But you had to go through hundreds to find the guys you have now.
Right.
Okay. And this is a really important lesson, right? You're going to go through hundreds to find the right employees. You're going to go through hundreds to find the right subs. You're going to go, hopefully not through hundreds, but you're going to go through a few marketing agencies, a few accounting companies, right? A few people on the outside that are your partners helping you grow before you find the right one. So don't be afraid of that process. It is a process, and you're going to have to go through it.
For sure.
So, Chris, I want to kind of wrap this up, and I appreciate you sharing your time and expertise with us. I'm going to wrap this up with the question, right? This is a question we're asking all our guests to answer. Again, right off the top of your head, you don't have to think through this too deep. This is business related. You're starting over, zero. No garage experts, no Elevate Homes. You're starting over at zero. You got $1,000. What are you doing with that $1,000?
I'm taking people in the industry out, to grab a coffee or to network or to connect. And then that's the first steps that I would do, is to build my network.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yep. Your network is your net worth.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Love it. Well, Chris, I appreciate you making time today to share your journey, your expertise, and some of the lessons that you've learned along the way. We'll have Chris's information available for you guys. If you want to reach out to him, take him out for some coffee, go up to Boise, Idaho, you're more than welcome to do that. But Chris will give you the shirt off his back. He's a real nice guy. So don't take advantage of him, because he's only got like 3 shirts, I think. Something like I'm just kidding. But thank you again, Chris. Appreciate you. If you guys are interested in learning more about Chris, again, we'll have his contact information. You can reach out if you're looking at ways that you can grow your contracting business or continue to grow, maybe avoid some pitfalls along the way. Reach out to us. We'd love to have a conversation with you. All right. That's all we got for you. You know what time it is. It's time to get after it. 3, 2, 1. Off you go. Thanks for listening to the Success Unleashed podcast. Before we go, show some love for your favorite podcast by liking, subscribing, and leaving us a review. Until we see you again, it's time to get after it. 3, 2, 1, off you go.